Hello everybody, I'm Roxy and this is Rock Me BS. So today I finally bring you my Goldsmith Prize Challenge update number 1. So if you don't know what the F I'm talking about, you can of course check out my announcement video down below. But basically I'm trying to go through the entire shortlist of the Goldsmith Prize. So up to 2017, those are 30 books because it started in 2013 and there are 6 books per year, but I'm also going to add the ones that are going to be nominated at the end of this year. I'm going to review them in pairs of 3, so not pairs, in trios. Anyways, let's get on with it. I'm going to evaluate them sort of in 3 categories or in 3 aspects, which are plot, form, and my overall impression. So let's start with the Lesser Bohemians. I read this for 2020. It was one of the first books I read for that challenge. I really enjoyed this. This is the story of a young actress, aspiring actress, who goes to London to study acting. And there she falls in love with a really strange and convoluted but already established older actor. And this is the story of their relationship. It's really good, but it's at heart a romance story. The interesting thing about this is the way it's written. So the sentences are sort of choppy, but not really. It's like stream of consciousness taken to the max. It's impressions and sounds and sensations, and sometimes she uses sounds as verbs. It's just really strange. It goes all over the place in that sense, but once you start getting into it, you realize it has a rhythm. It almost captures this idea of the city and London in particular, and how she goes about her day. And she's so young, so everything is sensation, and it's just so interesting to read. So it's a really classic story told in a very unconventional way. And if you like romantic stories, I would say this is totally for you. I think it's a good segue to experimental fiction because it's not too much all of a sudden. It's just the structure. It gets a little melodramatic times, yes, but then you have to remember we are reading this in a first-person perspective from a 19-year-old, 18-year-old. So the drama is going to be there. She's also like alone in the city, and she makes friends, and she makes a sort of kind of lover. It's very drama-esque, but it's also very interesting. And again, the writing style, oh my god. Second book I want to tell you about is Grief is the Thing with Feathers by Max Porter. Which is interesting about this book is that I read it knowing that it was experimental fiction, but not knowing anything about the Goldsmiths. And I adored this. So this is part memoir, part fiction. And it's inspired by Ted Hughes' poem, The Crow. It talks about how grief has all these different dimensions, and it's embodied by this crow. It talks about how his wife dies and leaves him with 2 children that are also in mourning, but that also have to deal with their parent, their dad, being in mourning. And it's a very complex and emotional story. It's told half poetry, I would say, half lists and some dialogues, but mostly I would say, if I had to define it, which kind of defeats the purpose, but anyway, if I had to explain it, I would say it's a lot of prose poetry weaved into a novel. It's very allegorical, of course, and of course Crow is merciless, but at the same time it has its moments of tenderness, because that's what mourning and grief is like. So it's a very interesting exploration, and it's just heartbreaking but beautiful. Then the third book I want to talk to you about, finally, I've been saying I'm going to talk about this book, and I never do because I was waiting for this video. Beatlebone by Kevin Barry. So Kevin Barry has been sort of a revelation author of the last 5 years, perhaps, in Ireland. And I can totally see why. I've now purchased his short story collection, Dark Lies the Island, but I'm also dying to check out City of Bohane. But anyways, this is a completely bonkers story about John Lennon going to Ireland in search of an island that he bought to scream, because back then scream therapy was really was something that people did apparently. And so yeah, it's the search for this island and for home and for peace. It's the archetypical journey meta narrative, but twisted backwards in so many ways. In terms of form, it's heavily inspired by James Joyce's Ulysses, so it has several parts, and some parts are actually in dialogue, like script dialogue, and then most of the other dialogue doesn't even, it's not even pointed out, it's just it appears and you have to deduce it. It is quite crazy. The thing I will say, I gave this 5 out of 5, but there is a part in here that is very meta that I'm not still convinced if it made the book better or worse. And in my opinion, the fact that that happened actually made me regard it even more highly, because when I'm undecided about a book, but in such a great way, can't wait to reread this. It's crazy all over. The story is really crazy. The form is really crazy. The meta aspect is really crazy. But I think if you like Alice Smith, who by the way has also been nominated twice, and I think once she won, you might like this as well. Or if you like James Joyce, it's just about engaging with the past in a way that feels so fresh and so refreshing, which is not the same. But yeah, there's something dated that brings you back to that place, but at the same time brings the past to the present and makes you regard it. So it's really, really interesting. It doesn't have much of a plot. I think this one is the most like heavy on the plot. Then this one is not a plot, but it's a process. If it's your first time reading experimental fiction, perhaps I wouldn't suggest you start with this. Actually, I would suggest you start with this one, because I think it's very heartfelt, but at the same time, it has that prose poetry that at the same time is super accessible. I think this might actually be a bit more accessible than the Lesser Bohemians. I hope you liked this video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe and comment what you think of these books. Are you thinking of reading them? And if you are, please do, because they are amazing. So that's it. See you next time.